Recently, I've been seeing all sorts of reports about a man named Omar Odavi and his relationship with fish. Specifically, that he has some sort of ability to commune with them. Sharks, rays, smaller fish, they all seem drawn to this guy. So is Omar Odavi a modern day real life Aquaman? Or is he just one of the millions of fraudulent so called news stories that abound on the internet and continue to proliferate in the absence of common sense and basic research skills? Stay tuned for all the information on this episode of The Weekly Strange. Hello, friends, and welcome to The Weekly Strange. I'm your host, Jon F. Merz, author, actor, adventurer. What is The Weekly Strange? Well, it's a show about some of the crazy and bizarre stuff I come across during my work, writing books and screenplays and anything else. Some of these are true facts that not a lot of people know about. Some are weird news stories, and some are just outright bizarre and can't be categorized at all, except that they're strange, like today's episode. We'll cover a wide array of topics on this show. So far, we've talked about recent Bigfoot tracks that appeared in southern Maine. Last week, we talked about the drone invasion of 2024. And this week, we're talking all about Omar Odavi, a hard-to-find man who popped up on TikTok and Instagram when drone footage showed someone, ostensibly him, reclining in a lounge chair at the shoreline, surrounded by a whole mass of sharks and rays who seemed curiously drawn to him. Let's call it that. They seemed remarkably calm. They just sort of seemed to be floating there in the waves as this guy lounged on a chair. Now, this was supposedly Omar Odavi, a man with the rare ability to commune with fish and attract them to be docile when in his presence. Now, if all this sounds a bit strange, then you'll understand why I thought it might be a great story for this podcast. After all, I've never heard of such a thing, and when it popped up on, I think it was either my TikTok feed or my Instagram feed, I thought, well, that's pretty cool. Like, if there's any sort of scientific background to this, I'd love to know about it. I've never heard of such a thing, and while Aquaman as a superhero was always pretty lame, in my opinion, I mean, I don't think I ever picked up an Aquaman comic when I was a little kid, but the idea of finding harmony with fish was intriguing enough for me to start delving into this whole supposed fishman, let's call him. Now, I started this journey by going to Google and just, typing in some basic search parameters. Things that ought to prompt the most powerful search engine in the world to spit out pages upon pages of responses whereby I could conduct some actual research. I mean, if it is as they say that this guy could commune with fish, there ought to be a ton of stuff out there because it's pretty groundbreaking. I wanted to do research. I wanted to dig into his background, see if he had any legitimate medical conditions that might have contributed to his so-called ability, that sort of thing. In other words, I was conducting actual research because I wanted to find out the truth. Now, I realize that a whole lot of people scoff at science these days and think that, just by crawling through hundreds of YouTube videos over the weekend, they somehow gain the same amount of experience as professional scientists who devote decades of study to a single topic. But that's not reality. All right? I don't care if you watch every YouTube video imaginable. It ain't the same. Education is vital, and we all need it, even when we're out of school. Maybe even more so when we're out of school. Social media is not the same thing as going to an actual school or university where you will be challenged on your theories and forced to defend them using things other than, well, my opinion deserves just as much respect as your facts. Pro tip, it does not. And as we'll see, if people actually took the time to be careful and regimented in their approach to study, we'd all be a lot better off. So anyway, getting back to Google. Google spit out a bunch of really low quality results. Let's just call them what they were. They were crummy. It was, Facebook pages, TikTok accounts, and, here I am thinking, well, this guy Omar Odavi, if he's really a fish man and he communes with fish and other marine life, there ought to be more. And that was my first clue that something might be amiss with the story. Rather than anything that looked even passably believable, like some foreign newspaper that you've never heard of, or an interview somewhere with an actual scientist, the results were largely comprised of videos showing the exact same thing. And then this one guy talking about Omar Odavi, and then having that video and subsequent videos regurgitated by AI and bot accounts to help spread it around. If this sounds like the making of something false, you'd be right. It was. There wasn't even a Wikipedia entry for this guy, which was another red flag. After all, just picture it. If your neighbor Bob wandered over and told you he could communicate with fish, and he was, actually sober when he said it, you'd probably want to see some sort of proof, right? And if Bob actually managed to show you proof that held up to inspection, well, then you'd probably want to tell someone all about Bob. And then when other people found out about Bob, they would want to tell other people. And news reporters would flock to see Bob, and people would write stories about Bob, and so on. And Bob would get his own Wikipedia page. But curiously enough, no one apparently has written a damn thing about old Omar Odavi, despite these fantastical claims. So now I'm thinking, well, there's got to be something behind this. Now, I did manage to find a video that was supposedly about Odavi, but was actually more about the host of that video realizing that he had been, quote, bamboozled by the whole Omar Odavi story, and subsequently him venting his frustrations over having been fooled by it. So what else leads me to discount this whole thing as just a steaming pile of bullshit? Well, first, the video that purports to show Omar surrounded by sharks and rays isn't actually the man named Omar Odavi at all. It was shot on an island in the Maldives where the marine life is known for being especially and unusually friendly. Most likely because they've learned that they can probably get a pretty easy meal if they just sort of hang out in the shallows and play nice with the tourists. Or it's simply down to natural curiosity. If you drag a lounge chair and set it in the water, eventually the local wildlife is going to want to come over and check you out. In any event, that first video with the lounge chair and all the sharks around it, garnered millions of views and thousands of comments by people who just accepted it all without question, which is really kind of sad and pathetic, especially given the state of the world right now. And then there's the original poster of the Omar Odavi videos. Now, this is a guy who goes by the name of Nunchaku's Dragon. Now, nunchaku is the official word for nunchucks. Anybody who grew up watching awesome Bruce Lee kung fu movies is familiar with nunchucks. Anyway, Nunchaku's Dragon has 133,000 followers on Instagram and is basically the only source of videos relating to Omar Odavi. Nunchaku's dragon, who describes himself in his bio as an animal expert and fashion model, as a combination, also has almost 200,000 followers on TikTok. But a quick review of his Linktree bio page shows that his YouTube channel has no content and his Patreon page has only one post. And so far, no one seems to have taken him up on his Cameo offerings for a birthday greeting either. So, more red flags. Now, Nunny, as I'm going to call him, has a bunch of videos on his Instagram page purporting to show Omar Odavi swimming with schools of fish. There's a guy out here in the water and the fish are all around him. But nothing in the videos seems remarkable at all. In fact, the fish respond to the person in these videos the way they typically do when a snorkeler is in their midst. You'd think that with such apparently amazing abilities, someone would have shot some truly incredible video by now showing these abilities in action. But instead, we just have what looks like stock video with Nunny's talking head leading us through a very questionable narration. Now, as Nunny explains it, Omar can commune with fishies because of the high mercury content in his blood. Now, it's important to realize that all of us have trace mercury in our blood, along with other heavy metals. You get these heavy metals as a result of things like environmental factors, exposure to them, eating a diet rich in seafood that may have been contaminated by mercury, etc. But heavy metal poisoning is very real, and so someone with supposedly elevated levels of mercury in their blood probably wouldn't be trying to be Aquaman as much as they would be trying to purge those heavy metals from their bodies before they, die. And then, of course, there's the fact that there are no articles written by anything even approaching reputable science on this guy. Hell, there aren't even articles written by complete crackpots. It's just Nunny and a bunch of bot accounts and gullible people regurgitating the same videos, the same comments, all over and over again. It's literally the definition of an echo chamber. Now, if you do a deep dive on Nunny's Instagram account and start watching some of these videos, it becomes pretty apparent that there's not much to the story. Not that Nunny doesn't try to make it continue. Now, the timeline on these videos is really interesting because he launches his first video on November 11th, 2024. And since then, he has put out 11 or 12 more videos. And each time they're all the same. There's a bit of stock or AI video behind him as he talks about Omar and his amazing gift. And Nunny has like this great, nature documentary voice. So it's all really chill and calm, man. And, it just doesn't add up though. Omar supposedly has a sister named Trisha with the same gift. Omar was supposedly coming to the U.S. for a closed session with Congress. Omar swims out to a water spout. Omar supposedly gets a message. Omar was supposedly grabbed by some nefarious government organization. Omar needs your help. Omar cried for 5 hours after reading all your heartfelt comments. Oh, and Omar doesn't have social media because holding devices robs him of his ability to commune with the fish. Trust in Omar. It's basically nothing but bullshit. This Nunny guy is grooming the gullible to give something, presumably money, when he invariably asks for it. Now, since February 15th, 2025, we haven't had any more updates on Omar, but I suspect there will be one soon, possibly as a result of this video. And Nunny lays the groundwork for his fraudulent activity pretty well by saying things like, Omar has a message, but he's not ready to share it yet. I mean, it's basically the same crap that religious zealots use to control their flocks when it comes to talking about the rapture or any number of other stupid ideas. It's this day. It's coming. Oh, no, it's actually this day. It's coming. Oh, no, it's actually this day. It's coming. And people just keep falling for it. Now, my favorite video is when Nunny shares some historical footage of Omar's childhood, which looks remarkably like old National Geographic documentary footage about the Inuit people from the 1960s and 1970s. Because, Fishman is apparently Inuit. I watched the video and I was like, I'm pretty sure I've seen that footage before, like back in grade school. So here's the thing. This wouldn't be a problem, per se, if Nunny was open and honest about it. But he's not. He supposedly flew out to some island to be with Omar. And while he was there, they were out on a boat and removed a marble from a whale's blowhole using, and this is what it says in the video, a crowbar. Sounds remarkably painful. Anyway, I'm guessing someone, Nunny, saw a Seinfeld repeat and thought that he could, do a take on that. Now, what Nunny does is he talks up Omar and makes him seem otherworldly almost, and yet demure and touched by everyone's sentiments. And then there's an ask, whether it's for shares and likes and comments or something more manipulative. I mean, does this sound familiar? It's manipulative, right? That's because it absolutely is. This show is supposed to be about me bringing you the strange, right? The unexplained, weird news stories, bizarre facts that not a lot of people know about, that sort of stuff. And I had really hoped that when I originally came across this story, it would be something truly cool and strange that I could share with you. I was pretty excited about it. Instead, when I started doing my research, it became quickly apparent that instead of sharing something strange with you, I'm going to be reporting on someone who thinks it's fun to spread more lies in a world already awash in them. It's a shame that this guy's account is simply chock full of crazy misinformation, because we happen to live in a pretty awesome and mysterious world. The strange is all around us, and it doesn't need to include lies that seek to misguide or even defraud its viewers or its audience. The story of Omar Odavi is a cautionary one. It's a simple idea wrapped around a whole lot of ambiguity, designed to obscure and obfuscate just enough so that it seems believable. Now, any hard questions that arise from these posts are easily thwarted by that same ambiguity. If someone asks, for example, hey, why are there no articles? Why hasn't the scientific community picked this up? Oh, well, that's because they're wiping the internet clean of Omar. And that's from Nunny himself. That was in the video from November 19th, as he's walking through the airport talking about, people have asked, why aren't there any Google entries? Well, it's because they're scrubbing the internet of any mention of Omar Odavi. Like, dude, really? Why? Because the guy can talk to dolphins? Who gives a shit? It just doesn't make any sense. Play on people's fears. Use nothing concrete that can be fact-checked. And appeal to them as if you're letting them in on a secret. And the naive and gullible will believe it all and be ready to do what you ask them to do, whatever that may be. Now, I don't know what Nunchaku Dragon's endgame here is, but be warned about his account and anyone else that purports to do what he's doing. Verify, then trust. Not once, not twice, but at least from a half dozen sources from various points on the ideology spectrum. Don't be one of these people that's like, whoa, I heard this thing, and then you support it by lobbing out 3 far right-wing news sources that are obviously biased. And don't do the same thing on the left side of the spectrum either. I see it all the time. It's like, well, of course they all agree with this. It supports the message they're trying to peddle. You got to protect yourself by asking the hard questions. Don't fall for stuff just because you want it to be true. Check your ego at the door, and please, for the love of God, use your common sense. As I said a few minutes ago, our world is strange enough without needing to resort to lies and fraud. And we certainly don't need a fictitious Omar Odavi or the people who create such lies. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time on The Weekly Strange when I'll have a more factually based story for you. And please be sure to check out the other shows on this channel, like The Other Side of Midnight, where we talk to callers all about their paranormal experiences, and The Hunted, where we discuss true crime fugitives still on the run from justice. Be sure to like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content when it gets uploaded. For now, I'm Jon F. Merz. This is The Weekly Strange. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.